Good evening. I'm Alicia Crank, Chair of the Board of KMVT Community Television, and we would like to welcome you to the City Council Candidate Forum presented by the League of Women Voters, Los Altos Patch, Los Altos Town Crier, and KMVT. Soon, voters will be heading to the booths or filling out their absentee ballots to cast their votes for all branches of government. It is our sincere hope that this evening's conversation will help you answer some of the questions and make decisions. For those of you at home, if you have questions for the candidates, you can call KMVT at 650-968-1540. We do want to take this time to thank our sponsors, the Stewart Rental Company on Old Middlefield Road here in Mountain View. They have all of your party needs. And the Menu, Artisan Cuisine of India, your dining out destination of organic, wild, and fresh cuisine. I want to take this time to introduce our two interviewers who will be fielding all of the questions or giving all of the questions for tonight. We first have Diego Abalos from the Los Altos Town Crier, and we also have L.A. Chung from the Los Altos Patch. We want to take this time now to have our candidates briefly introduce themselves before we get on to the question and answer session. And we will start with Jan Pepper.
Thank you to KMVT, the Los Altos Patch, the Los Altos Town Crier, and the League of Women Voters for putting on tonight's program. And we all really appreciate this chance to introduce ourselves to the voters. I've been a Los Altos resident since 1985, and I have deep roots in this community. My children graduated from the Los Altos Public Schools, and I was an active volunteer in school activities and in my son's Boy Scout troop. I have been active in the League of Women Voters, and I just stepped down as the president of our local league. Other volunteer activities that I've been involved in have been Greentown Los Altos and Los Altos Forward. I have 2 degrees from Stanford, a bachelor's in civil engineering and a master's in business administration, and I'm also a registered professional engineer in civil engineering in the state of California. My professional life has been one of environmental responsibility, working in the renewable energy field, incubating companies, acting as a consultant, and currently working as a manager for Silicon Valley Power. I'm running as an independent candidate, and I am committed to open, inclusive government, environmental responsibility, vibrant commercial areas, and fiscal responsibility, with the cornerstone of my campaign, listening and acting with respect and integrity. I hope that you will pick Pepper on November 6th, and I invite you to visit my website, pepperforcouncil.com.
Thank you, Jan. Before we continue, I do want to let the folks know at home that one of our candidates could not make it tonight because she is out ill. So Jeannie Bruins, we hope you get well soon and look forward to seeing you later on in other candidate forums. With that, let's go on to John DeBear.
Hi, thank you very much, and I want to thank our sponsors for hosting this forum this evening, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm John Baer, currently serving on the Los Altos Planning and Transportation Commission and running for Los Altos City Council. My family moved here in 1997 when our children were 1 and 3. My wife Lois and I chose Los Altos because it's a wonderful place to live and raise a family. Our children attended Egan and Covington schools, and my daughter graduated from Los Altos High School last year and is now a freshman at Boston College. Our son is a freshman now at Los Altos High School. I've volunteered for over 10 years in Los Altos, and I've demonstrated my leadership, integrity, and openness. I've served both on the Neighborhood Traffic Task Force and now the Planning Commission. Traffic and planning issues are some of the toughest challenges any city can deal with. I have a proven track record on these issues. I'm a serial entrepreneur and now spend my time working with early stage companies both in Silicon Valley and around the world. And I would ask for your vote, and if you want more information, www.johnbaer.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sorensen.
Well, thank you, KMVT, Los Altos Patch, and the Town Crier, and the League of Women Voters. Good evening, Los Altos. I'm Jerry Sorensen, and I have lived in Los Altos for 30 years and in the area for 50 years. My candidacy is focused on developing solutions to our problems. I look forward to working with the community to identify solutions for the community's challenges of downtown economic and social vibrancy, parking, traffic, pension reform, and the very important issue of finding additional school facilities to meet our students' needs. For more about me and the solutions that I've already developed for Los Altos, please visit SorensenForCouncil.org and vote for Jerry Sorensen on November 6th.
Thank you. Annabelle.
Yes. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to all of our sponsors. My name is Annabelle Pelham. As a candidate for our City Council, I offer 30 years of leadership experience and a successful record of establishing values-driven goals and objectives that are achieved through engagement and consensus. I'm a social scientist and a professor at San Francisco State University, where I was a department chair and program director for 25 years. I have exceptional experience in management and administration, budgeting, personnel, strategic planning, and assessment. My area of expertise is gerontology, focused on the macro and policy levels. I know what it takes to create multi-generational, vibrant cities, and I have published extensively in this field. As a community leader, I want to be sure that Los Altos remains a great place to live, raise a family, and retire, now and for all generations to come. As a community builder, I'm a graduate of the 2012 LEAD class, a member of the Chamber in Lava, and I have volunteered for Los Altos Forward in Greentown. I believe it's imperative for council members to actively participate in our business and civic organizations. My leadership style is problem solving that are values driven. Thank you.
And last but not least, Ms. Satterley.
Hi, good evening. Thank you to our sponsors and thank you to the viewers for watching this program and getting more educated about the various candidates for Los Altos City Council. My name is Megan Satterley and I'm running for re-election. Prior to being elected to the Los Altos City Council, I served as a planning commissioner in both Los Altos and Sunnyvale. I'm a Bay Area native who grew up in Portola Valley. I hold a bachelor's degree from Stanford University as well as an MBA and law degree from UCLA. I'm currently a Hewlett-Packard employee where I have worked for over 15 years. I hail from South Los Altos where I live with my husband and 2-year-old son and our 2 cats. My priorities are ensuring sound fiscal practices, thriving commercial districts, preserving the character of Los Altos both in commercial and residential areas, and safer streets for all drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians. I respectfully ask for your vote and look forward to serving you again. Thank you very much.
And thank all of you for your introductions. Again, your question people at the time will be L.A. Chang and Diego Abalos, and I am here just to keep it interesting. So with that, instead of flipping a coin, I decided to let ladies go first. So L.A. will start with the first question, and we'll start with Megan and go back this way. And then as we ask every other question, we'll start with a different person, and I'll try to mix it up and keep you on your feet.
I thought I'd ask a question that hasn't been asked in some of these forums before, I believe, because I've been to almost all of them, not the first one. I wanted to ask about recreation and youth, and maybe actually recreation multi-generations. And I grew up swimming at the Covington Pool, so you know where this is going. What's become of the Covington Pool, and how should this be a priority?
So in the Community Center Master Plan, which Council has adopted, we provide for the opportunity of building a community pool. It is one of the cornerstones of that plan. It provides the opportunity not only for a community pool, but it provides the opportunity for an expanded theater. It also provides the opportunity for an expanded library. Currently, we don't have sufficient community support to begin that plan. I support looking at extending the life of Hillview because I think this plan is a vision that will serve Los Altos well for many, many years. By extending the life of Hillview, we give the community more opportunity to determine whether this is a plan they would like to embrace, and it's merely the economics that have made them shy away from it, or whether in fact the community doesn't feel the need for those opportunities and would prefer that Hillview simply be replaced. So that's where the pool is right now. It's hopeful. I'm hopeful that the community will embrace the plan, but we don't have that support right now.
Annabelle?
Yes, thank you. Well, as I have been walking around Los Altos and talking with residents, a pool is really high on their priority list. I've been asked about that many times, and many people have stated that they would love to have a pool. So I think it's going to be important that that be part of the master plan as it emerges. It's really important to have a pool, I believe, for health promotion for all generations, and I would hope we would make it available for persons with disabilities as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm not a fan of the master plan at Hillview, and regarding the pool, I think I'd like to work with the schools to try and put pool sites both at Egan and at Block. That way we don't have one pool, but we have two pools. Like you, I grew up learning to swim and swimming at Terman Junior High School, and my children learned to swim at Covington before that pool was closed. So that way we would have two sites, and that's why I think it's so important to embrace the schools and the school district and find solutions to their facility needs as well as finding solutions to our facility needs.
Thank you. Mr. Bear.
So I was part of the Civic Center planning task force, and as Megan indicated, the plan was designed to allow a range of possible facilities to meet the community needs. What the plan was not constrained by necessarily was cost, so it allowed a range of possibilities, but the question always was, what was the budget and what were the priorities? I do think we can relook at that. For many of you who build homes, you know what it's like to build a house and then get halfway done and discover that you're running out of money. And so relooking at the Civic Center master plan, relooking at the priorities, looking at not reasons why we can't do something, but why perhaps we can do something, and perhaps scaling the plan back and working on it piece by piece makes good sense. My kids didn't have the opportunity to swim at the pool. They swam at pools at Foothill College in Mountain View, and I certainly want to enable the next generation to have a place to swim, as well as residents of all ages, because it's a great community building facility and center.
Thank you.
Well, I used to swim at the Covington pool, and my daughter was on the Covington Critters, and then they became a swim team without a pool. So it would be, I think it would be great to have a pool back. And as I have been walking around the town, like Annabelle, I have been hearing from residents that they'd love to have a pool, and they'd love to have a community center where families can go and all generations can go to gather together and be with the community. I think we're unique in this area in that Los Altos doesn't have a pool. We do have pools at the high schools, at Los Altos High and Mountain View High, and it would be great to have one for the community center. But it's all part of the visioning of looking at the community center, at the civic center, what do we want to have there. We don't have the appetite right now, it appears, to spend the money for the current civic center plan, and we need to figure out what the priorities are of the community and determine if a pool is in that priority list.
Thank you. We'll now hand the next question over to Diego, and we'll have Mr. Sorensen begin answering and ending with Mr. Bear.
Okay. As we all know, the Los Altos School District Bullis Charter School issue has created some fractures in the Los Altos community. So my question is, should the city take a role in resolving the Los Altos School District Bullis Charter School issue in our community?
Well, that's a bit of a complicated issue, but if you're talking about the facilities issue, absolutely. The city council should actively be involved. The single largest stakeholder in our town, not the only one, but the single largest, are the schools. It is why people move here. It is a much bigger issue than people realize. We're adding 65 students every single year. That's 2.5 classrooms. We need more facilities. And we have to address that issue, and the sooner we address it, the better off we are. And when the village at San Antonio Center opens, they're projecting about 400 additional kids in one fell swoop. That's a full school. So we have to engage rapidly, and we should not have the acrimony that we have between the city council and the school district.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, I really believe the City Council ought to be involved on 2 levels, trying to determine if we need a 10th site. That's still up to debate. And I think also taking an active role in peacemaking and leadership and bringing everyone to the table. I think it's so important that all parties, all stakeholders be present. I really don't believe we need consultants and task forces. I think there are enough wise, good people with good intentions in all of our communities to lead us toward a solution. I think the charter school is here. It's not going to disappear. So I think it's going to be really important for us to work together with all due speed and find a solution.
So I have been advocating for embracing the superintendent's task force. I believe it is an opportunity to bring all the stakeholders together in a public process to consider all the possible options. I have advocated to my city council that what we need to do is figure out what elements of that make us uncomfortable, if there are any, and make suggested changes, and that we encourage the other stakeholders, BCS, Los Altos Hills, and Mountain View, to do the same. Because if we can embrace the process and give the public the confidence that that process is thorough and complete, then I think as a community we can embrace the solution that comes out of that process. I think that's only possible if it's extremely public. All the data provided to them is public, that the public can comment on that data. We're full of analytics in our town, and there's going to be questions about the data. That all options are considered, that there are constraints considered as well as no constraints considered, because the community needs to know that every single possible solution was examined for the costs and the trade-offs associated with it. If there were a perfect solution, we'd already have it.
Thank you. Ms. Pepper?
Yes. I believe that the City Council should absolutely get involved. It's the purview of the Los Altos School District ultimately, but people do move to Los Altos because of the schools. I moved to Los Altos because of the schools, and it's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place for kids to go to school. And I believe we need to get all the stakeholders to the table, and that includes the cities of Mountain View, Palo Alto, Los Altos Hills, and Los Altos, because the students from those towns are all part of the Los Altos School District. The footprint of the school district encompasses them, and we need to get those cities more actively involved in helping to find a solution with us. In addition, we need to get the Los Altos School District, the County Board of Education, the Bullis Charter School Board, and the Mountain View Los Altos High School District at the table as well. And all of us together need to work together and find a solution. It's very divisive in the community right now. It's not a simple solution, otherwise we would have solved it by now, but it's a really high priority to get that behind us.
Thank you. Mr. Bear?
So, like the other candidates, I agree it's a community issue and a community problem that needs to be addressed and solved. It's critical. It's critical for our children. It's critical for bringing our community back together again, because that's what we value so much in this town, is a sense of community. I do believe that there are different roles that different organizations need to play. The school district has a responsibility to determine the school size, to determine how many students are going to be on a campus, to determine whether they want to seek one-story or two-story buildings. That's their purview. That's not the purview of the city council. Where the city council can contribute is to put on the table a range of possible options in terms of sites. Some of them are city properties, some of them are private properties throughout the district, and that district encompasses not only Los Altos, Mountain View, parts of Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, Los Altos Hills, and the unincorporated county. And then the critical part, and why this process is actually not as difficult as people may make it out to be, is you put all the options out there, you put a criteria for evaluating those options, and then you get a ranking of the different options. And then you choose between one or two better options. And I think through that we can come up with a good solution, and I'm looking forward to getting the rocks and sticks behind us and really bonding together as a community.
Thank you. We'll now go back to LA, who I believe has a follow-up question to what you just answered.
Since this is kind of my life covering Los Altos these days, I actually wanted to address that question of chemistry and relationships. The Los Altos City Council and the Los Altos School District used to meet very frequently and seem to have a good relationship. They're still meeting, and there's a lot of, I guess, brickbats being thrown. How would, given your positions, and you think this is very important, how would your presence on the council help smooth the way towards working effectively on the council, between the council and the school district? Because right now it's not very effective.
And we'll start with Ms. Pelham.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, I'm a social scientist, and so I come from a place of data and evidence and best practices. And I think that's a good place to start and a good place to stand. I think that allows you to be more objective. The other thing, just speaking personal, is I'm fresh, I'm new. I don't have any history or baggage or issues. And sometimes when there are those concerns, I think you can be absolutely objective when you are fresh and you are new. So I think there's an opportunity here to start fresh.
So I believe in treating others as you wish to be treated. And I've treated my council members that way, I've treated my fellow candidates that way, I've treated the school board that way. I feel that I can work effectively with everyone because of that's the way I treat people. I respect their positions, I respect where they're coming from, and I have not been a party to brickbat throwing, I think was the phrase you used, and nor do I intend to be a party to that. I think that as council members, we have to be statesmen, we have to represent the community, and whatever is said or done by any other party, we need to behave the way the community expects us to behave, and that's the way we move forward with relationships.
Yeah. Ms. Pepper?
The way I think my presence would help smooth the way is that I'm a listener, and I would be interested in really listening to what people's positions are and understanding what's really behind them, those positions. What's the motivation for why they have the position that they have? And then as someone who's been active in the League of Women Voters, we use a consensus building process when there's a position that we need to take on an issue. And I would use that approach, which is to let everyone talk and everyone hear carefully what everyone has to say and try to come up with places where we have agreement. So then we would have some certain successes. We will have agreed on certain things, and then we can move forward and build on those successes to eventually come to a full solution.
So anybody who's ever been to a planning commission meeting over the last 5.5 years has seen occasions where we're dealing with very controversial projects. And I've had the privilege of chairing the Planning Commission during some of the most controversial projects to come before our city. So I'm no stranger to difficult situations, no stranger to the fact that you need to respect both sides. You need to look for ways to solve the problem. I come from 35 years of working in high-tech business, and I'm one of the people who believes that if you get the information, if you look at the facts, if you develop a sound, transparent process, then you reach good decisions. I've also been on the board of directors of a number of companies, and I'm familiar with the need to ease people into positions that they're not always initially comfortable with. And I think that's served me well throughout my tenure with the city on the Planning Commission.
A solution to this problem will require significant creative problem solving, and it will require someone who has significant real estate experience, which I do. So I think that that's where I will bring strength, is in the creativity and the real estate experience. I'd also like to, of course, mention that every school board member has endorsed my candidacy, as well as the former superintendent. So I have full support from the school board, I have full trust from the school board, and you have to come from a trusting relationship.
Thank you. Diego?
As all of you know, I'm sure, the downtown area tends to sort of roll up at night around 5, 6 o'clock. So what can be done to attract residents to the downtown area in the evening and make it a more vibrant place during that time of day? What are the missing pieces?
Start with Megan.
Well, so one thing, businesses have to stay open later. So I think one of the missing pieces was the desire to put that first building block in place. And I think Los Altos Forward has provided a valuable community service by bringing First Fridays forward. And they have grown on that periodic event to actually make it embraced by the merchants. And I think if we can see that being sustained, it's a piece that can be built off. I think that having some additional larger restaurateurs in town, I think could also be another missing piece of the puzzle. Los Altos Grill does great business and is very lively, but they're not on Main or State, and so it doesn't have much spillover effect over there. Possibly the new project at First and Main might bring some of that to First Street. If they bring in a large restaurateur, we won't know. I think the 170 State Street discussion, public-private partnership, also could be another piece to that missing puzzle by bringing either office workers, residents, or a hotel into the mix right there on State Street.
Ms. Pelham.
Yep, thank you so much. Well, I happened to study Los Altos for about 2 years as part of the Age-Friendly City Initiative, and so I have a list of things that would help Los Altos become more vibrant. And that would be a core plan for downtown that places an emphasis on pedestrians and cycling and public transportation in that order. Automobiles last. We need more bicycle racks and bike lanes so that we can attract more of our cyclists. More parklets and a park-like environment to create a sense of gathering and community. Many people have requested a fixed route shuttle bus. On my walks about, people have really asked for that right up there with the pool. That's another thing we could do to bring in more feet on the street. It would be really good if we could link Foothill College faculty and staff to downtown. I think that's a golden opportunity for the First Friday activities. I think it would be a good thing to have a public-private partnership to Wi-Fi all of downtown Los Altos, and to have a lively sense of place so that people can gather. So the more people that you have engaging in social life, the more people will come.
Thank you. Mr. Sorensen.
Office development. The way you make downtown more vibrant is you need to have more people in downtown. The only way to do that efficiently from a square footage standpoint is office development. So the office development will support those businesses throughout the day, and it will make our businesses economically viable. If they're economically viable, they'll stay open later in the evening. This last Saturday night, I attended a function at the First and Main Sports Bar, and it was a great time. It was an absolute great time. Went till 12:30 in the morning. There was a band playing. Contrary to Megan's comment last week, it would have been great to have a pub crawl. There were a lot of people, and there was a lot of 30 and 40-year-old parents in there. They were all school parents, and they were having a great time. But we need more office development, and we just have not had nearly enough of it in the last, since the last major building built in the downtown core was 1986.
Mr. Bear.
So I am not an advocate of downtown Los Altos, Main or State Street becoming bowling alleys. Not a good thing for us to be doing with our downtown. And the good news is we have some really great things going on in our downtown. I was part of the downtown committee that looked at rezoning downtown, and we made significant changes. Those changes have resulted in new construction going on in Los Altos as we speak. In the 5 years that I've been on the Planning Commission, we've approved 150,000 square feet of new retail and Class A office space in downtown Los Altos. First and Main Street project, 45,000 square foot. New Safeway, new condo project along First Street. We have tremendous amount of new activity. Is it enough? No, we need to have more. I really want to see multi-tenant office. I have friends who have startup companies. They want to locate their businesses downtown, and I want to see more of that. I want to attract new businesses to downtown. I want to reach out to some of the communities like San Mateo, Burlingame, Los Gatos, and encourage those restaurants, encourage those retailers who are successful in those communities to come to Los Altos. It's a great town.
Thank you. Ms. Pepper.
Well, in order for Los Altos to be a more vibrant community, it needs to be a destination. It needs to be a destination for shopping, or for restaurants, for entertainment. And so one of the things I think that would help to make it more vibrant, especially at night, which I think was what your question was about, would be to have some more nighttime entertainment, such as a movie theater like we used to have in the 1960s. Apparently the last picture that showed there at our old movie theater was the last picture show. How fitting. So it would be fun to have a movie theater that could maybe double as a live theater too, so that there might be enough going on there to make it economically viable. And it'd be nice to have some retail that would stay open. My dad was in the retail shoe business when I was a kid, and you know, in order for someone to stay open at night, there's got to be enough business to keep them away from their family. So we need to, I think if we have some restaurants, theaters, restaurants that would stay open after the theaters are done, so that there's a place for people to go for coffee and dessert, that we'd get a little more action downtown. It'd be nice.
Thank you. So before I turn it over to LA, I have a follow-up question. Since many of you have already mentioned the overlapping of neighborhoods such as Mountain View, Palo Alto, and I being a Mountain View resident, but I also spend my money in Los Altos. With the San Antonio Shopping Center redevelopment, do you have any concerns about customer traffic being pulled away from the downtown area, as this is an area obviously where people are saying that it's closing up too early? And you know, is there concerns or fears that people will find themselves coming to San Antonio more often than not than keeping those dollars in Los Altos? And are you seeing it as an opportunity to advocate the local businesses in Los Altos to maybe stay open longer because of that? And I will start with Jan.
I think we need to look really carefully at what's going on there, because certainly that could draw a lot of business away from Los Altos. So what we need to do is try to figure out what's our unique personality going to be. Why is someone going to come to Los Altos as opposed to go down to the San Antonio Village? And you know, we're a unique community, and we have unique, you know, we have a great population. We're a wealthy community. And we have a lot of resources in terms of brain power and ideas that people have for what kinds of businesses they'd like to see and the businesses they'd like to go to. So I think we really ought to think about what kinds of businesses our residents want, get input from the community about that. And I mean, it has a huge effect on us. There are a whole bunch of housing units going in at that San Antonio Village. So not only does it affect, or might it affect, our downtown business, but it is going to affect our schools, because most likely there will be a number of families moving in there, and we'll need to make sure we can accommodate all the children in the Los Altos School District.
Thank you. Mr. Baer.
So there's no doubt that the new center in the old Sears site is going to have an impact. It's hard to tell exactly what that impact will be. Some of it potentially could be positive. We have a business district just across from that new center, and I'm hoping that it will have a positive effect on business for those areas. As Jan mentioned, we're going to have 330 new apartments in that complex, and it's certainly going to have an impact on our schools, and that's of concern, because our schools we're already running into a capacity issue. I think Los Altos has the potential to really differentiate itself. We have this incredible sense of community, and what we need are more restaurants. My wife often talks about the fact there isn't enough shopping for her in downtown Los Altos. We need stores that meet the needs of our everyday residents. We need more restaurants that meet the needs of our everyday residents. We have a population of something like 25,000 people in Los Altos, another 8,000 or 9,000 in Los Altos Hills, who consider Los Altos their downtown, their commercial district. And we need to think twice when we think about going to a restaurant in Mountain View. Going to restaurants, making our own community strong. We've got new developments going on. We're going to have a great community plaza in the new project in First and Main. It's going to be a great opportunity for the community to gather, and that's something that's special and unique.
Thank you. Mr. Sorensen.
So I do believe that it will have a significant negative impact on our downtown. It has to. It'll be a much more vibrant place. They're adding 1.2 million square feet. So We have a planning commissioner here who is excited about 152,000 square feet over a 5 or 7 year period, which will net us in our downtown 13,000 square feet of office space. They're adding 1.2 million square feet. Yes, it's going to have a very negative impact on us, and Jan and John have both said we need more businesses, we need more restaurants, we need more. Well, if there's nobody to support those businesses, if there's nobody in town to support those restaurants, they're not coming. They can't make any money. So it's all nice for us to say, well, we want to have a Abercrombie and Fitch, we want to have an Apple store, but if there's no foot traffic, they're not coming because they can't make any money. So yes, we are, and there's a reason that that facility is called the Village at San Antonio Center. They've stolen our moniker. So it absolutely is going to have a negative impact on us, and we've been asleep for a number of years as this has developed.
Interesting. Ms. Powell.
Yes, thank you. Well, I agree. My research on vibrant cities suggests that this is going to be a real challenge to deal with this new development, and it is called the Village, and that's very sobering, San Antonio Village. What I suggest, I think we really need to leverage our strengths, and the strengths that we have, we're a charming destination. But we've got to up our game. We really have to. We're going to have to get smart about what it takes to be economically vital and socially vibrant. We must do this. So it's important to become a destination, and that's going to mean more density. And again, I go back to pedestrian friendly, cycling friendly, and I think it's going to be important to have that shuttle bus to start bringing people in. I think it's so important for us to emphasize our strength, and our strength is we're a multi-generational community. Let's make that part of the destination. Let's become a haven for cycling. I think it's also important to have really good crossings for San Antonio and Foothill, safe crossings. Make them interesting crossings so people are more likely to come to downtown Los Altos from those major thoroughfares. So I think charm offensive. I would suggest a charm offensive immediately.
And Megan.
So I view the development as an opportunity. Clearly it is increasing competition for our retail and restaurant businesses. There's no doubt about that. Every new store that goes in at Stanford and Valley Fair is also increasing competition for our retail businesses. However, they are adding housing. That housing is a hop, skip, and jump from our downtown, and our downtown offers a very different environment from what is being built there. And while those residents may enjoy what's built there and frequent it, they may also come down to our downtown and enjoy it as well. So I agree that we need to be on the offensive, but by that I think we need to be taking advantage of differentiating ourselves and the experience we have and pulling those people in to experience what we have to offer, which I think is going to be very different from what is built there. So I think it's an opportunity, and we need to work with the business community to embrace the opportunity.
Thank you. I do want to take an opportunity to say that we have a very well-mannered studio audience, so thank you, everyone. You've been great. LA, your turn.
So I'm going to take the focus off downtown a little bit, because you do have 7 business districts in Los Altos, and I'm a South Los Altos gal, so I'm going to send a little love over to ask the perennial Loyola Corners. Since Foothill Crossings doesn't seem to have any problems right now that I'm aware of, let's ask about Loyola Corners. You did have to deal with this last week a little bit, so I'll try to change it up a little bit too. So everybody agrees that Loyola Corners needs some love. And so the next question is so what does that look like? And is there a way to work with the county to make Loyola Corners a little bit more accessible, a little bit more less confounding, perhaps, would be the question?
And we'll start with Ms. Adams.
So it's interesting that you mentioned accessibility. A decision was made so many years ago by the merchants in Loyola Corners that they did not want to be, sort of a party to the Foothill Expressway way of life, and wanted to be an off-ramp. And as the years passed, that unfortunately was not the best decision on their part. However, from what I've heard from residents in the area, they're not looking to change that configuration. Now, if people were interested in doing that, then I think we should be pursuing that with the county. But as far as I've heard from residents in that area, they don't want to increase their connectivity Foothill Expressway. I think the thing that Loyola Corners needs is exactly what happened at Foothill Crossings. I mean, Foothill Crossings not that many years ago was a dying, unattractive place. It is now packed because they got a key anchor tenant, and that's Trader Joe's. So Loyola Corners, the Los Altos bicycle outfitters there, my bicycle came from there as a child. They have been in business for decades. They are a destination store and they're able to sustain themselves. But if we could get some additional businesses there that were also destination stores, then you start to create an ecosystem. And that's really the problem with retail in Loyola Corners right now. There's no ecosystem to support those businesses. And so they've really gone more the services route. So that's really the challenge with these small neighborhood commercial districts, is finding that ecosystem that will be sustaining.
Thank you. Ms. Powell.
Thank you. Well, as it turns out, I had quite a large meeting with residents of Loyola Corners at the Sashu Health Club. So there were many people there. I listened to merchants, to residents, and even people in the unincorporated area. And they would very much like to become more vital and more vibrant. The main things they identified was a profound need to form a merchants association so they could be heard. I think that's important. I think they should do that. The other thing they wanted was better signage so they could be seen. Their shops and restaurants would be more visible. They're also struggling with traffic issues, and they need some really thoughtful arrangements of traffic so it can be more drawn toward the shops and restaurants in Loyola Corners. So yes, they do need attention. Foothill Crossing, actually Foothill Crossing does have a large challenge, and that is a lot of the cyclists are being towed away. That's bad for business to upset cyclists who want to spend money. I know they park there and take their rides. I'd like to suggest that we embrace that, and come up with a creative solution so they would feel welcome at Foothill Crossings, come up with a really creative parking solution so that they can come and have lunch or drinks or something before or after their ride. So rather than tow them away, why don't we embrace them and get a creative parking solution for them?
What do you think about that, Mr. Sorensen? I told you I got to keep it interesting.
Why do I have to?
The original question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I agree with Annabelle, and I think at Loyola Corner the reason for services, it migrating towards services, is the same reason that downtown Los Altos is migrating towards services. Those are the businesses that can pay that rent, any rent, really. Retail can only afford to pay about 8% of their gross sales towards rent. Consequently, they can't afford to pay almost any rent given the amount of business that is there or not there. Loyola Corners is a bellwether for downtown Los Altos, given where we are. I think Loyola Corners does need some love, and I think it needs some time and attention. I don't have a solution, and I haven't sat there and focused on it, and I think we do need to focus on it. I try not to have strong opinions if I don't have strong knowledge, and I don't have strong knowledge about what's really happening at Loyola Corners. It doesn't have the density required to have a successful retail environment today, and the question is, how can we achieve that? And there are transportation issues, there are parking issues, and there are density issues. So we have to look at all of those things, but we have to give it some very focused look.
Thank you. DeBear.
So putting in a few trees and planters is not the answer to Loyola Corners. And so the key is asking the right questions and putting in place the right process. And let me tell you the process that doesn't work. And we've seen that firsthand in town. We've seen where the city puts in a terrific engineering solution and then later on goes to the residents and says, so what do you think about this great solution? And it turns out it's not addressing the problem, and it's not a solution that fits with community values. And that's what happened at the traffic light at Covington and Miramonte. That's what happened with the roundabouts along Fremont Avenue. So if we're going to do something with Loyola Corners, it's not any of the 5 or 6 candidates who should be making that determination. We need to hear from the residents. We need a process so we can engage with them, understand what the problems are, understand what the potential solutions are, understand what the community values are. Do people want to have retail that services them locally? Are they looking for destination retail? Are they looking for increased service businesses? Let's not create the solution until we understand what the community values really are, and then we can craft a good solution.
Oh, I agree that Loyola Corners needs some love, and I am a bicyclist. I bought my bike at Bicycle Outfitters and love riding over there. And it's a neighborhood commercial area, so we really need to have the neighborhood weigh in on what they would like to have there. And community input is really what it's all about, and one of the ways to do that is to utilize the existing networks that we have in our town, the Yahoo groups, the Nextdoor.com groups, neighborhood watch groups or whatever, to reach out to the neighborhoods and have them communicate back, have some community meetings there with the folks in that neighborhood to really get some input as to what they'd like to see and what kind of businesses are going to thrive there.
Thank you. Diego.
I wanted to get your opinions on the city's Civic Center Master Plan. As you know, the city conducted a survey. It revealed less than favorable support for a bond measure this year. Just your overall thoughts. Do you think it's still give it a chance, make some alterations, or perhaps start over?
We'll start with Mr. Sorensen on that one.
Let me sugarcoat it. I think it's a terrible master plan. I think it's a terrible land use. It is the Taj Mahal of urban sprawl from 1960s. It is so inefficient, and it was obvious 3 years ago that this plan was not going to be supported by this community. If you attended the meetings, it was very clear no one was supporting the direction that was going forward. So you'd have meetings and people would put in input and they'd say, well, we'll think seriously about that, and they would come back and they would not have taken any of that input and incorporated it, with the exception of the programming. The programming elements are all there. But I think it's a very inefficient, sprawling facility that will never, ever be supported by this community, in my opinion.
Okay. Ms. Pelham.
Thank you very much. Well, I believe that the Civic Center plan and the plan for downtown Los Altos need to be interconnected, and that includes safe crossings across San Antonio. I think it's really important that we start fresh. I think we're going to have a fresh city council. Let's start fresh. I think it's important to look at the plan, to rethink the plan. I think it's possible to go up rather than sprawl. Save our land, save our apricot trees, save our parks. I think it's important. Let's have a visioning process that's short-lived and focused. I think we can do that with community town hall meetings. I believe it's possible in 12 months. I think we can do it. Let's get organized. Let's get a plan. Let's get to work. I think it's way past due. And there's a lot of literature. There's a lot of best practice. There's a lot of models to guide us. There are a lot of smart people in Los Altos. Let's get to work.
Thank you.
So we did go through a visioning process. We did convene a very large community center task force that included stakeholders from various groups throughout the town, and tried to represent all the interested parties as well as all the geographic areas of the city. We also held charrettes where people got to look at trade-offs and what was important to them and values. And I can't disagree with candidate Sorensen's interpretation of the plan. It is a plan that I think reflects the current character of Los Altos, which is suburban, single-family residential. There was quite a lot of discussion around what should be the height, what should be the architecture, what should be the feel for the site, And the overwhelming community response was it should reflect our residential character as opposed to any sort of high density or commercial character. That in fact a lot of people wanted to preserve single-story buildings, even getting to two-story buildings people had some issues with. The plan as it stands is not quite there as far as community support goes. I've actually been pleasantly surprised walking around hearing a lot of positive feedback about the plan. At this point, I honestly couldn't tell you whether the plan is not supported because of economics or because it's simply not the plan the community wants. And I think we need some more time and some more conversations to do that, but the strengths of the plan remain. It increases connectivity to downtown. It provides the recreational opportunities that we want. It provides additional recreational opportunities in the form of a pool, the opportunity for an increased library, the opportunity for a larger theater. This was all done by rearranging the space in order to make space for this additional use on the site to really maximize the site while still maintaining its look closer to our residential nature of the town, the vast majority of the town, that semi-rural residential character.
Thank you. Ms. Pfeffer.
Well, as I've been walking around the town, talking to people and knocking on doors, I get the overwhelming message that people are not interested in the Civic Center plan as it is, and that there is not the appetite to fund that level of a civic center. And so what I would suggest we do is to integrate the civic center with the downtown and try to come up with a vision for those together so that we can have those be more connected, and think about the uses that are currently undergone at the civic center. Are those appropriately placed there? Should they be in other places? There's been talk that we need to upgrade the police department, so we should think about that. Again, is that the right location for the police department, or should it be located somewhere else in town? And we just really need to kind of think it through again and come up with a vision, validate it, and then implement. So I know that we have done a lot of planning already, and we need to look at those plans because we've spent money on those. Let's make sure that that's still what the community wants, and if the community supports those, let's integrate those and implement.
So let me clear up some misinformation, because I like dealing in facts. And in fact, when there was a poll of residents as to their interest in supporting it, it received something like a 55% approval rating from residents. Now, as many of you know, we need a 66 2/3 majority to pass a bond measure. I think it was a combination of several things. People not knowing exactly what it was that the Civic Center was going to encompass, it being a lot of money, it being frankly still a tough time economically for a lot of people in our community. I still believe there's a need within our community for a community center. How do you build community without a community center? You can't do it. As Megan indicated, this had widespread community input. I was on that task force. There was lots of discussion and debate about what you can do. I can tell you folks, you can't take a pool and a soccer field and a baseball diamond and make them 3-story. Just doesn't work. Okay, so there were limitations on the site. 18 acres sounds like a lot of land, but we were trying to do a lot of things. We developed a plan that enables a lot of really great things. I think the direction we're headed in now in terms of separating those out and looking at funding them individually is the right thing. Do we need to look and make some adjustments to the specific plan? Absolutely. But keep in mind, it was a master plan. It wasn't a specific plan for individual buildings. That's the next step, and we clearly owe it to the community to ask some additional questions before we ask people for money.
Thank you. So one question separates you from a break. So I will take that question before we go on to it. So I'm sure you'll be as concise as possible so you can stand up and stretch. Candidate Pepper opened the door as far as saying that Los Altos is a wealthy community, and then Mr. Sorensen spoke about the fact that you want more retail, but even the retail stores can't necessarily afford the rent that they're having to pay. So for me, that leads to a question of affordable housing, because people that work in those retail stores are not going to be your MBAs from Stanford. So with that question, with that thought, my question to you is, what are your thoughts in general about affordable housing in Los Altos? Some people I've talked to said, what are you talking about? It doesn't exist. But I do know that Council Member Fishpaw did purchase a BMR home, or below market rate home, so obviously it does exist. So I will start with Ms. Satterley and we'll end with Ms. Pepper, and then we'll go to our break. So please.
So I'm actually a supporter of inclusionary zoning. I'm very familiar with it, having been on 2 different planning commissions. Los Altos does have a housing element. It is compliant with state law, which means that we have the zoning in place to provide housing for very low, moderate incomes. The way that we do that is through when we do have multifamily housing that goes in, or large developments like the Los Altos Garden Supply, some component of that is dedicated to one of those income levels. And we have been successful with that program. As you mentioned, Councilmember Fishpaw did take advantage of that. We've actually had a lot of units come online recently because we've had several large projects in town. So in Los Altos, we're never going to be able to provide, I think, every housing for every worker. I don't think that's a realistic goal, but I think that having some variety of options, I'm especially, while we haven't seen people take advantage of it, that our city workers, whether they be employed by the Los Altos School District or another school district or the city itself, giving them a potential opportunity to live in town, I think is one of the reasons that it's really important for the community to have these. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten many takers on that front, but I think Los Altos is in good shape from that perspective.
Thank you. Ms. Pelham.
Yes, thank you. I absolutely support moderate affordable housing in Los Altos. I think it's important to encourage it. I think it's important for us to encourage builders to make sure that they include BMRs as appropriate and legal in their new developments. I think it's really important that we make the process for BMR application clear. I have spoken to several people at the farmers market who've come up to me and said it's Byzantine, it's impossible, they can't figure it out, please help. So I think one of the first things we can do is make the process transparent and reasonable so a person can apply in the first place. People have complained about having to go to San Jose, Santa Clara, running around to different offices, trying to get the documents, where to submit them, how to do it. If we would just make what we have accessible and knowable, I think that would be a good start. I've talked to many of our young people. They would love to live in Los Altos, but they need moderate and affordable housing. So I think it's important, if we're going to have a multi-generational community, we want to make our condos, which is what they want, affordable for our children and our grandchildren.
Thank you. Mr. Sorensen.
So I'm not a huge fan of forcing developers to basically subsidize housing. But there are some things that we could do that would allow allow housing units to develop and have developers not have to afford, basically projects having to subsidize the whole bill. A friend of mine who's on the state Senate created the density bonus. So if you have a piece of property and you're allowed 50 units on that piece of property, and the developer is then given 5 additional units to that density, then he's not paying for that, and that project is not having to endure the cost of that. If you eliminate the city fees, all of the government fees associated with developing that property, now the developer is in a much better shape to provide that housing. And it should be provided, and it's fine to be provided, but why doesn't the government take its role and allow the developer to spread that cost over, not have so much cost associated with developing those units? You'd get far more, you would get people who are not trying to avoid the process as they are today. So what you'll see is if you build 20 units, you have to give 2, say, well, they'll build 19. Magically, they'll build 19. But if you're giving them basically a bonus, density bonus, and you're not charging them all the government fees associated with those two, they'll build the 22. So that's what I would do.
Thank you. Mr. Beer.
Well, I support affordable housing, and not only do I support it in the projects that I've approved, while on the Planning Commission, we've in fact made sure that we provide a variety of housing options for all residents in our community. There actually already is a bonus in place. It's state mandated for projects. So if a developer does provide our affordable housing targets, we do give them incentives, development incentives, and so it's actually working very well. We're fortunate that we've had a number of very large parcels where we've been able to not only get additional housing, but also ensure that there is a meaningful affordable housing element to those projects.
Thank you. And Ms. Pepper.
I'm very much in favor of having affordable housing and making sure that Los Altos fulfills its commitment to have affordable housing. And a number of ways that we can do this perhaps would be with public or private partnerships, and having consistent rules for developers so that they know what the rules are, and having incentives for them to do it. I mean, it's important to have everyone who wants to live in Los Altos to have the ability to live there. So I would like to make that happen.
Thank you. So with that, I believe we will be taking a short break, and we'll be right back.
Does that mean they just stay here?
Hello, I'm Jeannie Bruins, and I'm running for City Council for one simple reason. Los Altos is truly a great place to live and raise a family. I want to keep it that way, while also strengthening our sense of community, our sense of belonging. Like so many others, I chose Los Altos for our wonderful schools. Having grown up in a military family, I've treasured putting down roots in one community for 25 years and raising two sons who've attended our neighborhood schools, Oak, Block, and Mountain View High, before going on to Northwestern and USC. The number one issue I hear as I go door to door is that there is a disconnect between members of our council and our residents. This disconnect is compromising our sense of belonging. We need to focus on becoming more inclusive, to have a more effective and meaningful engagement process, a process that respects multiple viewpoints, includes multiple generations, and uses a variety of methods to reach out to residents. A process that allows us to work together to address key issues in our city. We want a vibrant downtown. We need a master plan, a shared vision, a roadmap that ties our central business district with our community center. We value our village character, but we need to define what that is so that we can protect it while helping downtown to evolve into the kind of place we like to spend time. Our project-by-project planning often divides us and risks missing strategic opportunities to accomplish shared objectives. We need safe, convenient, accessible streets, not only for cars, but for bicycles and pedestrians too. If we engage residents early in an open process, we can build trust as a city, and that will let us pursue more creative solutions to our transportation needs. Finally, we need to protect one of our greatest assets, our public schools. To do so, we need to end the dissension that exists between the Los Altos School District, Bullis Charter School, and even our own City Council. We must work collaboratively and build upon our common principles. We all believe in and we all benefit from providing the highest quality education for our children. Yes, I will bring my own ideas to the table, but what is most important to me is to hear your ideas. I would prefer to build a vision together rather than impose my views. Visit my website at jeanniebruins.org to learn more about my qualifications and to share your ideas with me. Thank you.
KMVT 15 has been serving the community since the late 70s and became a nonprofit community media center in the early 80s, bringing you local television programming from local volunteers. KMVT Community Media is located right here in the heart of Silicon Valley. We provide hands-on training, equipment, and airtime to our users to build community and empowerment through the expression of media. Our youth camps support hundreds of students yearly and allow their voices to be heard. KMVT has well over 100 volunteers of all ages who come into our studio each and every month to produce local programming. Programming ranges from talk shows on community issues, cooking shows, local artists, magazine news programming, and live entertainment, and much, much more. We cover over 100 sporting events, including football, softball, baseball, volleyball, and basketball. We also cover local events like the Art and Wine Festival, Veterans Memorial Day, and the Spring Parade. KMVT provides coverage of local elections, debates, and candidate statements. We offer something for everyone, whether you're a youth, adult, senior, a nonprofit business, or even a for-profit business. So why is KMVT important? Because it's programming like this that brings a community together. We also provide full hands-on training for all ages in studio production and field work, graphics, editing, and an understanding of media in a world surrounded by noise. So we ask the next time you turn on your television or you want to support an important cause, think KMVT 15, your local community television station, bringing the community together through all forms of media. Support community media and television today.
Sign up today.
Welcome back to our candidate forum. I want to say thank you again to our sponsors, the Stewart Rental Company and the Menu. Hopefully during our break you were able to see the candidate statement by Jenny Bruins, who isn't here tonight. So again, we hope that she will get well very soon. Now that we're back, we will start up again with L.A. Chung.
I think I'll ask a neighborhoods kind of question and traffic. John Baer kind of alluded to it earlier in this session. So at Miramonte and Covington, there was the great traffic light revolt at that intersection. And then later on in the spring, almost summer, there was a roundabout proposed for the Fremont Avenue corridor along Fallen Leaf Lane and possibly even further down. And again, a huge number of people came out and were fairly uniformly, and these people are from the neighborhoods, and were fairly uniformly against it. I don't think I heard anyone saying they were for it. What does this say about the process? And is there a way of improving on this?
And we will start with Ms. Pepper.
Great, thank you. I think there is a way of improving on this and improving the process overall. And what I would suggest that we do is that we seek more input from the neighborhoods for every issue that comes up in the city. And I would suggest that we utilize all of the different media that we have out there to reach the people in the community and in the neighborhoods. One way would be to use the Yahoo groups, Nextdoor.com, the neighborhood watch groups that already exist, and push information from the city out to those groups so that people are aware of what's going on. And I'd also suggest that we have neighborhood meetings with the council and staff on a regular basis so that, and have a two-way dialogue so people know what's going on. There's a capital improvement plan put out every year as part of the budget, and there are lots of projects in that include these types of things, these traffic calming projects. And I think it would be great for the council and staff to meet with the neighborhoods and let them know what's on the planning table so that people can react, and the people who who live in those neighborhoods can provide positive solutions as opposed to having negative reactions when they find out that something's happening in their neighborhood and they weren't even consulted. And we can save money by doing this as well. Instead of hiring a consultant to do a lot of work figuring out how you can calm traffic, let's go to the neighborhood first and talk to them, because people there are living with it and they probably have some great ideas.
Mr. Baer.
So I talked about this earlier. The process is broken. We need to start off not with the engineering solution and find the best engineering solution, but make sure, number one, we understand the problem. Number two, we need to understand what the community values are, and then we can actually craft a good solution. The other part of the problem is that getting community input is sometimes a challenge. I've chaired planning commission meetings where we are desperate to get community input and people just don't show up. So we need to change that process as well. I've actually been introduced to a local tech company that has a new way of getting input. They have worked with the city of San Jose to get community input on budget issues, and they have offered actually to work with Los Altos, no charge, no obligation, but work with Los Altos and help improve the process for getting community input. And if I'm on council, I'd love to talk to the fellow council members and see if we can do a trial of that process, because I think the current process really doesn't get sufficient community input.
Thank you. Mrs. Sorensen.
So it is the process, I think, like the Civic Center, this is a top-down process rather than a bottom-up process, so the residents and neighbors are not fully engaged in the process properly. I think we need to have a comprehensive citywide traffic plan, and I think we need to actively engage the residents and the citizens in the charrette process to understand a citywide comprehensive traffic management plan. And I'd like to see an integrated traffic management system installed which would coordinate our signalized intersections. A friend of mine called me today as I was getting ready to come here, and he actually sat through 11 cycles on the light from El Monte to get through Foothill. 11 cycles. Now what happens when you have somebody sitting in there for 11 cycles is they end up in the neighborhoods. So if you do a good job of managing the traffic through the signalized intersections, then the traffic doesn't spill into the neighborhoods. And so we have to get focused right there, and we need a comprehensive traffic management system.
Thank you. Ms. Powell.
I agree. We do need a traffic system, a management plan in place. I think that it's too bad we're having to wait until February till we hear the report back, but we can at least begin to start thinking. Once again, I want to emphasize the importance of pedestrians first, cycling second, public transportation third, and then automobiles. I think another way to avoid these catastrophes is to listen, and listen some more to our neighbors and our neighborhoods. I also think it's a good idea to move our study sessions, the City Council study sessions, into the neighborhoods that are affected by what's being proposed in the study sessions. I think we've got good, smart people. They can tell us right then and right there at a town hall meeting what's going on. Let's use our technology. I think an interactive website developed in the city would be so much more valuable and useful if people could penetrate through and see what's actually going on and what's being proposed in their neighborhood. There's a new software available now called Bazingo that allows people to poll their opinions. I would recommend that too.
Thank you. Ms. Satterley.
So as a long-term Hewlett-Packard employee, I believe in continuous improvement. This is an area that needs desperate improvement. It actually is one of my motivations to run because I want to see that we have a solid implementation process for these plans that we've adopted. The collector traffic calming master plan, when I walked the collectors and talked to residents about the plan, they have never even heard of it. For the bicycle transportation plan and for the upcoming pedestrian master plan that we are just launching out, I think that council needs to set as a priority figuring out what that implementation process should be. I think that process needs to evolve as we learn what works and what doesn't work. I think several good ideas have come up from various candidates. One thing we've learned that has been incredibly effective is those sandwich boards announcements. That's what brought the people out in both of those traffic discussions that you referenced in the question. But obviously, how they were engaged and the time they were engaged and how that worked, you know, I was at the Fallen Leaf Lake roundabout, and it was shocking to me actually that there were people who came to that meeting who thought that the bulldozers were showing up on the street the next day and that the purpose of the meeting was to inform them what had already been decided. And that was not the purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss what option was being considered and to get the feedback so that it would be incorporated into any proposal that might go forward. So just the disconnect between the objective of the meeting and what people expected from that meeting. On the plus side, it was hopefully positive that they learned that that was not in fact the case, that we weren't going to implement that without having hearing from them. But the fact that they thought that really, you know, took me aback. So if I am reelected, it will be my priority to make sure we have a much better implementation program that engages residents and works much more effectively than what we've seen in the past.
Our next question will come from the town crier, and it will start off with Mr. Bear and go this way.
Okay, we've heard mixed opinions on whether downtown Los Altos has a parking problem. Do you believe downtown Los Altos has a parking problem? And if so, do you have any ideas to solve this issue?
So I think the downtown will have an emerging parking problem. We're not there yet. We actually have a number of solutions already in place. As part of the approval process for the new Safeway, we're gaining 129 parking spots, which are going to be available to the public. Yes, we've already lost some spots, so it won't be a net increase of all 129 parking spots, but it will help the situation. We also have a parking management study that's looking at where the problem is, to better understand where the need is, where the growth in our parking demand is going to be. I think there are a whole variety of potential solutions, and they range from restriping to public-private partnerships for parking structures. Passerelle Group is actually in discussion with the city about redevelopment of 170 State Street. And as part of that initial discussion, they've been talking about the potential for underground parking and working very closely with the city. So I think there are a number of interesting opportunities. I think there's some additional opportunities along First Street where we have some very large parcels where there's an opportunity to look at parking structures, look at underground parking, and finance that through potentially public-private partnerships.
Thank you.
The council has, over the last year or so, given away or reduced the parking inventory by over 100 spaces. With the First and Main project, I think it's going to be 150 spaces or so. So we were near capacity. I think we had excess capacity up until those spaces started to go away. I disagree with John and the 129 spaces with Safeway. I don't think we're going to have full utilization of those spaces. I mean, yes, they're there, and yes, we could use them, but I don't think we'll have full utilization of those spaces. I have, at my own cost and expense, developed the restriping plan that would add up to 330 spaces. That is, without question, in my mind, the most efficient, cost-effective way to quickly add spaces. If you stay with, I mean, you could go from 220 to 330 spaces, depending on the alternatives and the trade-offs. And I will say that some on this dais have said that that was impossible to do, that it was impossible to achieve additional yield out of the parking plazas. But in fact, you can add 220 to 330 spaces. You can do it very cost effectively, and you can do it very quickly. The parking management plan is great. It'll say virtually the same things as the 1993 plan said, and it'll say virtually the same things as a number of other studies have said over the last 4 or 5 years. But maybe this time we'll be able to act on some of the recommendations that have been put forward.
Thank you.
Heather. I don't know if we have a parking problem per se. I think what we might have is a parking management challenge, I think is what we have. I think it's really important that we have underground parking be part of the mix, restriping be part of the mix. But I also want to say a word that when we do these changes, we include pedestrians and parking for bicycles, cycling, and also keep in mind what could be added by a little shuttle bus. I think that's important. I think it's important if we have parking structures above ground, and I think that's in our future. It's important that you be able to see through them so that they aren't these big solid blocks. So there can be attractive parking structures. I think it's also important to plan for smaller cars and electric cars, because I think that's our future, much smaller and electric cars.
So I think we wish we had a parking problem. I think that if we had the full occupancy downtown and the full vibrancy that we want, we would have a parking problem. However, I am try to make decisions based on data. I have not seen the 93 study. I wish I had heard about it earlier than this re-election campaign. But I did support going forward with the parking management study. I wish we had it 6 months ago. I think it would have been prudent to have it sooner, but I think that at this point we're waiting for those data counts to happen. In September should be done, and then for the holiday season, that will give us the data as to where people are parking. Are these people short-term parkers? Are they employee parkers? Are they long-term parkers? What is the demand we're trying to account for in the current configuration of downtown? And from that, we need to extrapolate the future that we want to see and build that into any solutions and changes we make. I think the restriping option is a very interesting option, a very potentially cost-effective option. It does require chopping down a number of trees, and for those of you who followed closely First Street, chopping down some trees resulted in a delay in the project when the decision was made not to chop down those trees. Trees are near and dear to the hearts of Los Altons, myself included. However, I think one of the things, again, this study will give us is what are those trade-offs, and we will have to make a decision as a community as to whether that is the cost-effective way and that the loss of those trees is the direction we want to go. So I'm really looking forward to that study coming back in January.
Thank you. And Jan.
Okay. I think that if you want to park right in front of the store that you want to go to, that maybe there is a parking problem. but that's not, I think that's not really the case. I mean, what we need to do is come up with a vision for what we want our downtown to be like. And once we know what we want that to be like, we would incorporate all of these plans that we already have, this downtown urban design plan that was done in 1992, our general plan that was done in 2002, our bicycle transportation plan that was just done, this parking management plan that's being undertaken right now, and the pedestrian master plan. We need to put all of those together and figure out who has the responsibility for parking. As we develop our downtown, how much parking do we think we're going to need? If there's going to be more bicycling and we provide more access for bicycles to park, that's going to reduce the number of cars that we need. So I think we really need to look at it holistically, along with everything that we're going to do downtown, and that'll determine what our parking needs are. And I think we also need to look to the future. Any new parking that goes in should be wired for electric vehicles. That's the wave of the future, and we need to make sure we can accommodate that as well.
Okay, and I actually think that's a good follow. Did you answer? I apologize.
I did.
Okay, it's the water.
You forgot my answer.
I have too many voices in my ear right now. So I think this actually makes for a good follow-up question, and we'll start with you, Jan, and we'll go this way. Are there initiatives or ideas in neighboring cities such as Mountain View and Palo Alto that you would like to see implemented in Los Altos, whether it be parking or retail, or just what do you see in other neighboring cities that you would hopefully like to see add to Los Altos?
One of the things, as I was driving down Castro Street on my way to work today, there isn't a lot of parking right on Castro Street, but they have these little parklets. And we actually experimented with one of those last week in Los Altos, where 3 parking spaces in front of Pete's were set aside. One was used for bicycle parking. Some racks were there that could accommodate 16 bikes, and then the other 2 spaces were made into a little outdoor eating area, and it was really nice, and people really enjoyed it. And it took 3 spaces up, but it provided parking for 16 bikes. So assuming that 16 people rode their bikes instead of driving downtown, we actually freed up 13 parking spaces, if the math works that way. But I think as far as looking at other cities, we need to look at those cities that are similar to ours, that have similar demographic. You know, we aren't by a train station, so you know, and we are by Foothill Expressway. There's a lot of people that go down that street. So I think we need to look at similarly sized cities, like maybe Los Gatos, Burlingame, maybe Alameda, and just get some ideas there. And you know, we also have great ideas from people in our community. The Los Altos Forward has been bringing a number of speakers in who have expertise from the work that they've done throughout the world. And there's a lot of ideas out there, and I think we can make Los Altos a really terrific place, even greater than it is right now.
Mr. Bear.
So I was on the downtown committee that actually looked at what we could do to increase the vibrancy of our downtown. And we looked at a number of cities. We looked at and visited Los Gatos. We visited Carmel, 2 communities that most of us, when we go to, really enjoy going to. We say, gee, these are really enjoyable places to come, to stroll, to visit. And those were our local role models. And we looked and saw what they did. They protected their main street by keeping low density, keeping the height limit as essentially a 1 or 2 story buildings, and then allowing the perimeter of that downtown to grow, to encourage new development, to allow for a greater selection of restaurants, of retail stores, to allow for greater footprint size, which is what modern office workers need, what modern retailers demand. We've implemented those changes. We changed the zoning. We've seen the result of that. While some may disagree with me, our city clerk sent me a memo, sent actually all the candidates a memo, saying that in the last 5 years, we've got 150,000 square feet of new retail and office space that has been approved, that is either built or in the process of being built. That's a remarkable change. We need more. And I think we can do more, but it's a great start. We're starting to see the result. Sales tax revenue in the first quarter of 2012 is up 9% over a comparable period the year prior. So we're going to see improvements. We are seeing improvements. We're looking at communities that are like Los Altos, or a lot of residents of Los Altos like, and those are the communities we're looking at for best practices.
Thank you. Mr. Sorensen.
So I'd like to see a variety of things. I want to address some of John's points. Los Gatos and Carmel are both very remote in terms of their nature, and so they are able to draw from a larger geography than Los Altos is. Also, to follow the plan that John has prescribed, which is to keep no development on State and Main Street, is to basically say we're going to limit growth to about 4 parcels left in Los Altos. So if you actually look at what parcels can actually be developed, you're down to about 4 parcels. That is not going to get it done in terms of the economic vibrancy that we need. 9% sales tax growth compares to a county growth rate of over 12%, so you are actually losing market share to other communities in the county. So I don't think that we're really on the right track, despite we've made a little bit of progress. It's not really the right progress. I'd like to see more people places, as Jan said. I'd like to point out that I was one of the speakers at Los Altos Forward for my expertise on creating vibrant downtowns. And I'd like to see an approval process that does not keep businesses in hostage, basically, for a long period of time. We have a restaurant today that is trying to expand its space. It is going to take longer to get an approval to expand its space than it will to construct the San Antonio Village. That's ridiculous. We have a restaurant that preceded First and Main that was never able to open because we kept it constrained. We wouldn't allow it to open. We kept throwing new things at it. So that is not a business environment that would be successful. So I'd like to see the approval process tightened up, made easier for people to get their approvals, and I'd like to see more development, and I'd like to see much more in the way of places, create a sense of place in our downtown.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, there's a fair amount of literature available for us to look at. There's the 880 Cities Initiative we can look at. There's the new urban design examples. There's the Age-Friendly Cities Initiative information. There's Fred Kent's placemaking. So there is a vast amount of literature available to us, and best practice and examples about how to build a more vibrant city. I like the idea of the arc parking structures. They're attractive. They look like little flowers, and you roll your bicycle up into it. I think we could have these strategically placed around Los Altos. Perhaps you've noticed some of the benches and umbrellas that have recently emerged. That was through the leadership of Los Altos Forward. They offered community conversations and opportunities to see what residents want, and added those. Parklets are also really important, tiny parklets where people can gather, people see people, pedestrians, and they come together. I also think it's a good idea to look at international expertise. There's a lot of best practice available to us around the world. Many people argue that the best bike path examples are now in Bogota. So let's look at Bogota. It's not Los Altos, but we can get good ideas about how to create bike paths. Also, the best bike rental examples right now are in Paris and in New York. They're models of how you can have a low-cost rental, low-cost borrowing for bicycles. I think we could do something like that in Los Altos. So I think it's also okay to look at global best practice as well. There's a lot of good ideas around the world. We can use them. And so that's what I would offer.
Thank you.
So I'm a fan of stealing whatever good idea you can find. It doesn't have to come from me. It doesn't have to come from Los Altos. If it's a good idea, you know, let's embrace it. At the end of the day, Los Altos needs to be Los Altos. We are not going to succeed by trying to replicate another environment. I think candidate Sorensen is absolutely correct. Carmel and Los Gatos, while similar in demographics, geographically are very different from where we sit. We sit a few miles from Stanford. We're about to sit even closer to San Antonio Village. And for us to continue to be the city we want to be, to continue to have the adored downtown that we do, we have to stay Los Altos. Now again, does that mean that other cities don't have great ideas that we should bring into Los Altos? No. Does that mean there aren't new ideas that we should be incorporating in downtown Los Altos? No. But I still would say at the end of the day, Los Altos has to remain Los Altos.
Well, if you do a study trip to Paris or Bogota, I want to go with you. So with that, we'll turn it back over to L.A. Chung from the Los Altos Patch with the next question.
So I'll change it up a little bit more. San Jose Mercury News had a story not too long ago about double dipping. Double dipping and pension reform. This is where I'm going, pension reform. Los Altos in its last year had made some changes with some of its pension arrangements and has tried to rein in some of that. And actually the reason why I bring up the Mercury News article, of course, is because there is the ability, if you've been elsewhere in another jurisdiction and a different pension system, that you can then go work for someplace else as long as it's not the same pension system. And we do have a police chief who's making quite a bit of money, combined with his pension from the San Jose Police Department and now working here for Los Altos. And this is all perfectly legal. I mean, and most people, if it's legal, you can do it. It's more power to you, I think, is the attitude. I guess the next question would be, well, so how do you feel about this ability to do that? Los Altos is under a different system. You can get department heads who have retired from elsewhere, and then they have an extremely comfortable life, and everybody should have a comfortable life. But is there something the city should be doing? Is there something the city might want to do? Is there any kind of just a sense from other folks, is this what we want to do?
And we'll start with Mr. Sorensen, followed by Ms. Pell.
Pensions are a big issue. They are a silent killer because there is a increased claim on our budget every year, and we're not booking our liabilities as we need to be booking our liabilities, our pension liabilities. We're doing a 2-year budget cycle. We're not projecting out. CalPERS is saying they're getting 7 or 7.5% or 7.25% when they're achieving essentially 1%. So it's a significant issue. I remember a number of years ago, and I don't remember if it was Gilroy or Salinas, where the chief of police and the assistant chief of police retired with a 30-year pension and were immediately rehired the next day. And the city manager declared victory because they would come back to work at a lower price, yet because they were familiar with the town. It was like, you got to be kidding me. We're now paying double for those two positions. That city was. It's clear that this is a big problem. And we do need to get focused on it, and we need to get focused on it quickly because it is going to erode our budget. And it's something that you don't see, the residents don't see, the citizens don't see. It's the services start to deteriorate because you don't have enough money. So I believe you have to look at private-public partnerships to look at ways that you can deliver services at lower cost and higher quality, and it eliminates the pension issue because those are no longer your employees. We've done it our city attorney is not, we don't pay their pension, we don't pay a number of pensions. So I think we have to look at that because it, one, will deliver services at a higher quality, I believe higher quality, at a lower cost, and it will eliminate future pension liability issues.
Thank you. Ms. Pell.
Okay, thank you. I think this is definitely a national issue. It's an issue that all municipalities are facing. State budgets, city budgets, national budgets, it's certainly true. I think it requires a really close scrutiny of budgets and really focusing and understanding what the realities are, what the pension obligations are, and to know that at the outset when people are hired on. That's really, really important to have that clearly stated. I think it's important for the council to work with the city manager to make sure that she has the appropriate tools and support to make wise decisions in this regard. We're a city manager model. So I think that's going to be important to give her the resources and tools that she needs and support her in making the decisions and those tough choices. I also believe in hiring the best person for the job. So if a person walks in the door with other other resource. If they're the absolute best person for the job, then I think we want the highest quality. But I think it's also important to remember that we are moving toward 1/5 of our population being over the age of 65. All right, so it's a national phenomenon. It's the aging of the baby boomers. So I think we're going to have to take this into consideration, that our populations around the world, and America certainly here, are aging.
So it's not clear to me how much people really understand the pension issue and how limited our options are by being members of CalPERS. So I could probably speak for days on this topic. I have been a member of the California League of Cities Employee Relations Committee, specifically trying to advocate for pension reform at the state level. And the reason why that is required is because as a member of the CalPERS agency, there are very limited things that we can do as a city. We can institute second tier, which is what we've done for new employees. We can increase employee contribution rates, which is something that we've negotiated and need to continue to negotiate in the upcoming labor negotiations. And beyond that, there's not much we can do today. If our new employees are not members of CalPERS, CalPERS will require us to prepay the pension obligations for all of our existing employees. That's simply not affordable for the city. So what we really need is not the pension reform light that we got that the governor just signed. It's a step in the forward direction, so we should embrace that, but it didn't give enough tools to the cities. And that's really what I have been advocating for. You need to give us more things so that we can bargain at the negotiation table with our labor unions to come up with something that makes sense in a total compensation package. Unfortunately, we don't have those tools. We have to maximize the tools we have today. It's again, another reason why I'm running, because I am passionate about continuing on this direction. I'm hopeful that the state legislature will realize they have to go further than they have today, but we, the city, have to work with the tools we have and make the best use of them.
Thank you. Ms. Pepper.
Thank you. Although I've worked in private industry for the majority of my career, a couple years ago I joined the City of Santa Clara in their electric utility department. And so I'm staff there in Santa Clara, and one of the things that I do is manage the $200 million bond portfolio for the utility. And when we're going out for refinancing or refunding their bonds, one of the things we have to look at is the unfunded liabilities, namely how much liability does the city have for pensions that they don't have the revenue for. So I was very curious, looking at Los Altos' budget, to understand what kind of unfunded liabilities do we have in Los Altos. And what I saw is that we're not in too bad of shape. It looked like it was about $900,000. So that's, I mean, it's a big number, but not nearly as big as the number in Santa Clara, but of course they're very different cities. But that's something that we really need to keep an eye on, and I'm very interested and have a lot of experience in dealing with budgets, and so fiscal responsibility is something that I'm very concerned about. I think one of the things that we can do is that when someone from Los Altos retires as a Los Altos person and a Los Altos staff, and we're paying their pension, that we would not bring them back and hire them as an as-needed employee, and allow that double dipping to occur in our town. As far as privatization, moving some positions to the private sector as opposed to having city staff take those on. The League of Women Voters actually did a big study on this last year, looking at what are appropriate types of positions or appropriate types of services that a government provides that could be provided by the government or could be provided by private agencies. And so, that's something that we could have before us. And then certainly we need to make sure that we direct the city manager to make sure that our staff is used effectively.
Okay, Mr. Bear.
So the city's done a pretty good job with the tools it has at its disposal. It's now a different pension plan for new hires. Negotiations with unions typically set the floor on what other employees will get, but the real change has to occur at the state level, and it's really going to require a concerted effort on behalf of a lot of the local governments to band together to lobby Sacramento to make significant changes so that we can address this issue on raising ages, prevent double dipping. These are things that make good fiscal sense and are good for a good way to address the problem, but they're only going to be implemented if we can get the state to buy in. We're part of CalPERS, that's a real benefit, but getting out of CalPERS is a very expensive proposition. If we were to leave CalPERS, we'd have to pay up front the cost, which is something like $20 million, and that's simply not feasible.
Thank you. So we have one last question before we get to our closing statements. I know you're happy. So no pressure on Diego, but you get the last question.
All right, since it's the last question, I'll ask you this one. In your opinion, what are the 3 biggest challenges facing the city in the next decade?
Let's start with Ms. Satterley.
In the next decade, you said? Wow, you just blew up my time horizon there.
I only asked you for 3.
And because we are getting closer to time, you have about 1.5 minutes each. Starting now.
Well, so I think funding our capital improvement projects is a huge challenge for the city. We have been funding that out of budget surpluses. I believe we need to modify that so that it's being funded out of the budget. That's the only way to ensure there will actually be funding for that. And part of the challenge with that is not only is that the way that we pay for the maintenance of our street and our existing infrastructure, but we also have aging infrastructure and we have increasing infrastructure needs. And so we have this double challenge of the surplus reducing and more needs for the funds. So I think that is going to be a big challenge. I think the cost of some regulations that the state has passed is going to be a big challenge for us, specifically around stormwater management. That's something that the general fund is currently funding. It used to have a small enterprise fund balance, and we're down to the equivalent of 2 cents, and it's going to be exclusively funded by the general fund, and yet we have to improve how we manage our wastewater throughout the city. That's going to be a huge expense for us to undertake. And the last thing I would say is the combination of the community center and downtown, again, just the infrastructure needs of replacing the community center and adding any additional parking.
Thank you. Ms. Pelham.
Yes, I think the most important things are to get a comprehensive and agreed upon master plan for the Civic Center and the downtown. We've got to become more economically vital. I think if we don't, we're going to suffer pretty dramatically. I think our hope is to become more socially vibrant and bring all the good best practice that we know to Los Altos, make that happen. Leverage our charm. We're unique. Let's build on that. And I also think it's going to be important to plan for a multi-generational city, but be aware that our population is aging. So aware of an aging population as well.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Pensions, I disagree that we don't have tools that can solve that problem. I think we do have tools that can solve that problem, and that is, and to speak to Megan's point, which is infrastructure. So the pensions is gobbling up more and more of the budget, which is going to impact the infrastructure. School facilities are a must because it's the same issue. It's a silent lead poison that will sit over the city like a pall. So we need to solve the school facilities, and we just have too many new children coming into the school district. And I completely agree with Annabelle, a comprehensive downtown visioning that includes the Civic Center and that is completely supported by the residents. So they're absolutely a part of that visioning process. So those are the 3 things that I think are critical to the town over the next 10 years, Diego.
Mr. Bear.
Okay, so there are 3 things. Building a strong business community. If we have throughout our town, we have a number of, we've talked about downtown and Loyola, we have lots of business districts. Making sure that they are strong will ensure that we have a strong revenue stream from sales tax revenue. building community, and I mean building community broadly. And that encompasses not only things like the community center, community plazas, but making sure we address the school issue. It's all about community, folks. That's what's important. That's what really drives us as a community, and it's an essential that we do that. And the last one is that make sure we adapt to changes. The world is changing, but we need to make sure we retain the special charm and character that make Los Altos the gem of the peninsula, and we can't ever forget that.
Thank you. And Ms. Pepper?
So looking at the next decade, I would say, what issues would we not need to be talking about 10 years from now? At a candidates forum in 10 years, what issues have been solved? And that would be better communication. We've all been talking tonight about better communication. So let's hope that in 10 years we will have solved that we're reaching out to the community. People feel like they are heard, people have input, we're using all the tools. Who knows what kind of technology will be available then that we'll be using to make sure that we are communicating well between the residents and the city. The second is that we have an integrated downtown civic center, and it's an example of sustainability, of green building. It's an example of what the future can be, and people are looking to Los Altos as to what can they do to make their downtowns viable and with having a village feel and economic vitality. And the third is that we would be in good fiscal shape, that we have managed our funds wisely over the next 10 years, and that there's sufficient revenue streams coming into the city to allow us to do what we want.
Thank you. And with that, you will now each have 1 minute for your closing statement, your lasting impression for the evening that you want to leave with everybody. And remember, it's going to be webcast as well, so people can hit rewind and listen to it again. So since Jan started with the opening, we'll start with Megan for the closing.
Okay. So I want to thank the moderator, Alicia Crank, and our two questioners, Diego and LA, for spending the evening with us. And of course, I want to thank our sponsors for sponsoring this event, and all of you viewers for taking the time to become more informed about the candidates in this year's election. I am Megan Satterley, and I am seeking re-election to the Los Altos City Council. My priorities are sound fiscal practices, including balanced budgets and continuing pension reform, improving safety on our roads for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians with a process that enables resident input at the right time in an efficient and effective manner, and promoting the character of Los Altos throughout our entire city. For more information, please visit my website, megansatterley.com. I respectfully seek your vote November 6th. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I wanted to let everyone know that my leadership style is something called values-driven problem solving, and it's shaped by a process of inclusion and consensus. I have the experience, the skills, and the leadership to be a strong and effective council member, and I have a strategic vision to move Los Altos forward. So my name is Annabelle Pelham, and I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Sorensen.
So thank you for everybody who came out tonight and for the sponsors. I hope that Los Altos, if you're looking for solutions to the problems that we face today regarding traffic, parking, downtown and school facilities, and for the issues that will develop over the next 4 years, I hope that you will consider voting for Jerry Sorensen on November 6th, and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bear.
So thank you for a really fun evening. Being up here is sometimes really challenging, but this was really very entertaining. So thank you all for making that happen. It's easy to talk about the things you are going to do, and I've spent a lot of time here tonight talking about the things that I've accomplished. I've been involved with the city for 15 years, and I've provided over a decade of service of actually making things happen, making improvements, putting neighborhood traffic plans in place, and really making Los Altos a better community. There's more to do. That's why I'm running for City Council. I'm John Baer. I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jen.
Thank you very much for putting on this forum tonight. It's been a great venue and an interesting evening. So I'm looking forward to being able to apply the good government skills that I've gained from the League of Women Voters, apply the business and analytical skills that I have from 30 years of business experience, and to be able to make good decisions and ask the good hard questions. We don't know what kind of issues are going to come up in the next few years, but I hope you would have confidence that I would take a analytical approach and listen well to what the issues are before us. And I ask you to pick Pepper on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I know that you have a lot of these things to do, and doing it live and knowing that people can stop and rewind and makes it a little bit more challenging. But I thank you so much for having a great attitude throughout all of it. I want to thank our sponsors again, the Stewart Rental Company and the Menu, along with the League of Women Voters and the station here at KMVT. I want to thank L.A. Chung from the Los Altos patch. I'm sorry, I knew I was going to do that. And Diego Abelos from Los Altos Town Crier. I do want to thank the staff here at KMVT, as well as the volunteers who are staffing us tonight. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of the voting season. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I can take water.